My mother shouted, "You're nothing but a parasite." Then she tossed my bags out the door and told me to leave. I left, without a word. 3 weeks later, my dad called, frantic. "Why can't we access our account?" All I said was, "Maybe ask the parasite." And just like that, everything exploded. Hey Reddit. It all started on a dull Tuesday, one of those dreary, overcast days where even the sky feels like it's pressing down on your shoulders. I had just dragged myself home from another brutal shift at my temp gig, the kind of job that barely covered gas money, let alone student loans or basic groceries. At 26, I was still living with my parents, not out of laziness or lack of ambition, but because life hadn't cut me any slack. I graduated into a recession, then lost 2 jobs in a row thanks to downsizing. I hustled, freelance gigs, weekend shifts, odd jobs. I paid rent, bought my own food, pitched in for the bills, but none of that ever seemed to register with my mom. That day, I walked into a storm. She was already waiting in the living room, arms folded, that scowl plastered across her face like armor. I knew immediately, this wasn't going to be a normal conversation. She didn't even let me put my bag down. She started right in, accusing me of being a sponge, a grown man with no pride, dragging the family down. I tried to explain, told her I was interviewing, submitting applications, doing everything I could. She didn't care. She called me a leech, said I was sucking the life out of them. Then, without hesitation, she grabbed my go bag, the one I always kept nearby, and flung it out the front door like garbage. My dad said nothing. He sat silently at the dining table, gripping the newspaper like it might save him from taking a side. I caught his eyes for a moment, just long enough to see that any support I'd hoped for wasn't coming. So I picked up my bag and left. No yelling, no theatrics. I didn't even close the door hard. And that silence, that rattled them more than any screaming match could have. The days after felt surreal, but oddly peaceful. I was crashing on my friend Caleb's couch, no grand plan, just enough space to breathe. I woke up early, applied to jobs, walked around to clear my head. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't tiptoeing around someone else's resentment. Caleb didn't ask questions, just handed me a key, gave me space. We talked about music, school memories. We didn't talk about my parents, that felt too toxic to touch. But underneath it all, I was angry. Not the kind of anger that yells, but the kind that builds in silence. Because I kept thinking, how did I become the villain in a house where I'd done nothing but try? It wasn't the insult that broke me. It was everything that came before it. The years I spent being dependable, the one who fixed their phones, set up their bills, taught them how to use email, printed their boarding passes, updated their passwords. The one who stayed home, didn't party, never got into trouble. I wasn't perfect, but I showed up. And still, I was seen as the burden. Meanwhile, when my younger brother wrecked his car drunk, they bailed him out, shrugged it off. Boys make mistakes. When my older sister flitted from city to city after dropping out of college, they cheered her on, she's finding herself. But me? I was the leech, for needing a moment to recover after getting wrecked by a system that promised success and delivered scraps. So I made a quiet decision. I'd disappear, completely, no drama, just gone. And I had the means. You see, when I moved back in, my dad asked me to help manage the household bills, so he added me to the family bank account. I had full access. It was supposed to make things simpler. And for a long time, it did. But that joint account? It was the last tie I had to them, and I wasn't about to leave it hanging. So I did what any responsible adult would do. I formally removed myself from the account, completed all the bank's verification steps, flagged a couple of suspicious recurring payments they never noticed, and asked for a temporary freeze until the primary holder, my dad, confirmed the updates. It was basic security protocol. But to them, it probably felt like a financial bomb going off. 3 weeks after the blow-up, the call came. I was in Caleb's kitchen reheating leftover pasta when my phone buzzed. It was my dad. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering, not sure if I even wanted to hear his voice. I let it go to voicemail, then it rang again, and again. On the third try, I picked up. He was panicking, his voice sharp, almost shrill, like I hadn't heard it since Grandma passed. What's going on with our account? I can't pay anything. What the hell did you do? In the background, I could hear my mom's fury building, shouting over him, blaming everyone but herself. Blaming me. I let him rant. Just let it wash over me for a couple of minutes. Then I said, quietly and clearly, ask the parasite. And hung up. The quiet afterward felt like peace, but I knew that wasn't the end of it. 2 days later, I got an email. From their lawyer. According to them, I had caused undue disruption. I had abused digital access. They were trying to spin the narrative, painting me as some cold, calculating hacker who sabotaged his aging parents out of spite. I laughed, out loud. Then I spent an hour gathering receipts, screenshots, email chains, bank logs, everything that proved I hadn't taken a cent that wasn't mine. Every move I made was documented, above board, clean. My lawyer reviewed it all and told me I had nothing to worry about. They had no case. Still, it hurt. Not because I feared legal trouble, but because my parents would rather go to court than call me and admit they'd gone too far. They'd rather weaponize the law than deal with the truth. That night, I stood on Caleb's tiny balcony, watching the city glow beneath me. And I thought about everything I'd done to earn their approval. All the birthdays I'd spent fixing their internet instead of celebrating mine. All the hours I played peacemaker during their fights. All the times I stayed quiet just to keep the peace. Now I was finally out of that house. But freedom didn't feel like relief. Not yet. Because I knew my mom. She wouldn't leave things unfinished. She needed a target. And this time, she had set her sights on me. But what she didn't realize. I had finally chosen myself, too. And I wasn't afraid of what came next. The fallout came quicker than I expected. One moment, I was the struggling adult child they resented. The next, I was public enemy number one. Group chats blew up, family whispers got loud. I became the cautionary tale, the ungrateful son who turned on his parents. That's when my cousin Sarah texted me, frantically asking if it was true I'd drained my parents' savings and vanished. That's when it hit me, they weren't just upset. They were rewriting history. And in their story, I was the villain. Not the kid who propped up their digital lives for years. Not the one who paid bills from his own paycheck just to help. No, I was the backstabbing saboteur who ruined everything. It was bizarre watching it unfold. Like a twisted game of telephone, only I was the one being reshaped. One aunt unfriended me. Another left a voicemail dripping with guilt trips. Family sticks together, even when things get hard. I didn't reply. Because for once, I didn't need to. I had proof. Every transaction, every message, every account login. I collected it all, neatly organized, triple backed up. Labeled it, just in case. But I didn't send it, not yet. Because I had something more valuable than a defense. I had clarity. And direction. A week later, I landed a job. Not a side hustle, not a contract gig. A real, stable IT position at a solid mid-sized firm. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. I accepted the offer quietly, packed my things from Caleb's couch, and moved into a small apartment. Just enough room for my setup, a mattress, and a folding table. But it felt like everything I'd been waiting for. The start of something real. On my terms. It wasn't much. But it was mine. No one could tell me to leave. No one could call me a burden in my own space. And as I stood in the quiet of that empty living room on my first night, the hush all around me didn't feel lonely. It felt like peace. Not the fragile kind that comes from people tolerating you. But the kind you carve out for yourself, after the world shuts its doors and you keep walking anyway. Meanwhile, my parents were unraveling. I didn't have to reach out. News found its way to me. Turns out, my dad's business account had been tethered to the frozen personal one. He missed 2 vendor payments. His credit line was flagged. A lease for a new car got rejected. They were scrambling. Confused, angry. But still too proud to admit the chaos was partly of their own making. No calls. No apologies. Not even a check-in to see if I was okay. Then something shifted. One afternoon, my phone buzzed. It wasn't my mom. It wasn't my dad. It was my sister. The same sister who used to laugh when I stumbled. The one who mocked me for not having my own place. Her voice was small, fragile in a way I'd never heard before. She said, "Dad's in the hospital, stress-related heart palpitations. He collapsed in a meeting. They rushed him to the ER. The doctors said it could have been worse." And just like that, the anger I'd been holding cracked a little. Because yes, he'd stood by while Mom tossed me out. He'd stayed silent when I needed him loud. But he wasn't cruel, not like she was. He'd been afraid, passive, but not heartless. I thanked her, asked which hospital, thought about going. In the end, I didn't. Not because I didn't care, but because I knew my presence would only stir more chaos. So I did something they never would have expected. I sent flowers. White lilies. No note, no message. Just the same kind he sent me when I graduated. That silence, gentle, unspoken, it cracked something open. 2 days later, I got a text from him. No blame, no excuses. Just, "I'm sorry, you didn't deserve what happened, can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to protect the quiet I'd built. But then I thought of the man who used to sneak me extra cash when mom cut me off. The one who stayed up late trying to help me with math, even though he barely made it through high school. The one who once whispered, over burnt toast and black coffee, "You're the smartest person I know, don't let anyone tell you otherwise." So I agreed to meet. Just him and me. Neutral ground, a quiet diner with cracked vinyl booths and bottomless coffee. He looked older, more worn. Like the weight of silence had finally settled into his bones. He apologized again. Said he froze. Said he let his fear of conflict make him complicit. Said he should have spoken up, should have protected me. I told him I appreciated the words. But I wasn't sure we could ever go back. Not to the house. Not to the old rhythm. He nodded, didn't push. And then he said something I didn't expect. He told me that after I left, everything changed. Mom got meaner, sharper. The house was louder, angrier, even in the quiet. And for the first time, he saw it. How much I had held together. Quietly, invisibly. He said, "You weren't the leech. You were the glue." That line sat in my chest for days. A week later, my mom reached out. Not with regret. Not with clarity. But with a long, rambling message about how families are messy and things got heated. No apology. Just soft manipulations. Excuses disguised as insight. Guilt dressed up as love. I left it on read. Because forgiveness doesn't require re-entry. And some wounds don't close with words. They heal with space. That was 6 months ago. Since then, I've rebuilt everything. I got promoted. Bought a decent second-hand car. Furnished my apartment slowly, piece by piece. Started therapy. Joined a local group and made a few real friends, the kind who don't need you to shrink to fit their comfort. And every night, I go to sleep in a place I built. A space no one can take from me. My dad and I text now and then. He's making the effort. And I see it. I respect it. We're not who we used to be. But maybe, just maybe, we're becoming something better. As for my mom, I've let go of needing her to see me clearly. And that's the real freedom. Because I'm not a leech. I never was. And now, I know that for sure. I'm free.